Hi there, this is Gina from McGuire. So glad you're here. Today's video is extra fun because most of it was done by my 11-year-old daughter, Lila. She knows that I've been having some shoulder pain, and when she saw the stencils that she uses today, she was really excited to give them a try. Now, she'll start out and do most of the cards. I end up finishing them, and I'll explain why a little bit later in the video, but I really think you'll love some of the techniques that she did. She will be doing a 2-for-1 stencil hack that was inspired by the 4-for-1 stencil video I did the other day, and I'll link to that up here on the top right and in my description below. I also wanted to apologize if you hear noises in the background. We are at the lake this week, and so everybody's having some fun while I get this voiceover done. Lila won't be here for the voiceover because she's out swimming, but you will see her hands in action throughout the video. Okay, let's look at the products that we'll be using today. These are the Waffle Flower Oversized Fruit Stencil Set. There are 3 stencils that allow you to create large strawberries, kiwi, grapefruit, lemon, oranges. You can really create a lot with them. And Lila's going to do 3 different fruits today. Along with the layering stencils, we are using the oversized fruit dies that you can see there on the desk. These just go really well with the stencils. You can use them together or separately. You could even just create large die cut fruit pieces if you wanted to. As for sentiments, there are 2 different sets that we'll be using today. One has really large sentiments that go really well with the oversized fruit. Now there is a stamp set and a coordinating die set available. Then there is another sentiment set that has some punny sentiments in it. This is great on the front of your card or on the inside. We'll be doing both. On our envelope flaps, we're using this fantastic fruity texture die. Now this doesn't cut anything, instead it does that piercing pattern that gives faux stitching. So we'll do that on the envelope flap. Now there are a bunch of other fruit products that Waffle Flower has in this collection. Lila thought it'd be good to show it all to you so you can see how you can mix and match them together. Here's a hot foil plate, and there are layering stencils that will color this, or that texture plate I showed you before. There is a stamp set with the little fruit icons. Here we also have the sweet stamp set and a sweet word die available. So you can mix and match all of these. We'll just be using the first few that I showed you today, but I wanted you to know there are lots of options. I do have links below to all of these products if you want to get a closer look at them. Okay, let's get started with creating. Lila will be creating the orange cards first. This is definitely our favorite. You could easily make these lemons or limes if you wanted to, even grapefruit. I had mentioned that we'll be doing a 2-for-1 stencil hack. So we have 2 pieces of white cardstock that will ink at the same time. Both are 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. You could do any size you want. We also have a Waffle Flower grip mat. Now this mat is clear, and it's the same material as a clear stamp, so it has a natural stick to it. We're pressing it onto our glass work surface so it stays put, and then putting the 2 pieces of white cardstock right up against each other on it. The grips mat will make sure that the paper doesn't shift as we stencil it, and it'll hold the stencil in place. It's a really handy tool. Any sticky mat would work, or even temporary tape. We're starting with the first stencil and using the seeds as a guide to center it up. So the center of the stencil will be lined up with where those 2 pieces of cardstock meet. It's very easy to do. Lila's lining it up, and it really doesn't have to be perfect. Once she's happy with where it is, she'll press that stencil down, and you can see how it kind of suctions on to the stencil and holds it there. We thought it'd be good to mask off the little seeds on this one because we're doing oranges. The seeds I think are best for the kiwi. You'll see that later. So we're just using a little bit of masking tape there. And we have some blank stencil material here. I talked about this in a previous video. It's really handy. They're big sheets of a thin stencil material that you can die cut to create your own stencils, but here we're just using it to mask off the top and bottom of those white cardstock pieces. And they too will also grip onto the mat and not move. You could also use pieces of acetate or scrap paper for those masked pieces at the top and the bottom. So you could apply any inks that you want to over these stencils, any colors. Lila chose the Altenew Fresh Dye Inks because the colors are really vibrant and they're very easy to blend with, but use whatever you have. She's using a large ink blending brush from Altenew. Since it's one color over a kind of a large area there, this is much faster and easier to get a nice blend. But then she comes in with a mini ink blending tool and a slightly darker color of orange, and just applies that along the outside edges of the rind of this orange. So it's good to have a variety of sizes of brushes. However, I know that's not always possible. So what I would recommend if you only do one size brush is to do a medium brush. That way you can cover larger areas with it, and if you want smaller areas, you just kind of use the tip or side of the brush. But if you are looking for two size brushes, I really like that large Altenew one and these mini ones. But there are many great brushes out there. You can't go wrong with any of them. All right, so after applying the 2 shades of orange, we're using a dry cloth to wipe off that excess ink. Then we can remove our big stencil material mass and this first stencil. We're going to leave those pieces of cardstock where they are and applying a light orange over the inside of these orange peels. Now, this doesn't have to be blended great because we're going to do more stenciling over it. Also, I really encourage you to give yourself grace. Nothing needs to be blended well. You can leave it with a little variation. It'll still look beautiful. And remember, dye inks do dry out and smooth on their own a bit. All right, now for the next stencil, we're lining that up right along that seam where the 2 pieces of cardstock meet, pressing that down onto the grip mat, and then using those big pieces of extra blank stencil material to mask off the top and bottom of our cardstock pieces. Now we're using a medium orange here, again with that big blending brush to first put down some ink. Then we're putting a little bit of a darker amount of ink towards the center there. So you can see how handy a blending brush like this is. All right, so after she has applied those 2 shades of orange, we can remove all of those stencils once again. We do clean the stencils with a quick spray of rubbing alcohol and a dry cloth. It's all you need to do. All right, now we decided to put that stencil back in place after it was clean and then add the look of texture to the little inside pieces of the orange. Lila is using a waffle flower blending brush here that has a different shape to it, and using that to apply white pigment ink in just little brush strokes. This was easy to do, can be done with any small brush. You could even use a Q-tip or your fingertip for this if you wanted to. So as she finishes this up, remember you could change the colors to do a lemon, a lime, a grapefruit, lots of things you can do. And now, as she takes these card panels off, look at that. We have 2 card panels for 2 cards. Now, before we finish those cards up, let's create a few more backgrounds. Next up, we have the kiwi. We will do these in the same way, but using the stencils a little bit differently. So we have the 2 pieces of white cardstock, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, that we're putting together onto our grip mat. Again, if you don't have a grip mat, you could just tape your pieces of cardstock together on the back side and do the stenciling with the help of some temporary tape. We'll put the first stencil down right over that seam where the 2 pieces meet, and then put that extra stencil material at the top and bottom to mask. Again, you could use just scrap paper there, some clear packaging. I just like the stencil material because I can see it, because it's cloudy, and because I can die cut it and make my own stencils. And you'll see that in a moment. So Lila applied Hero Art's sand ink over the openings and then wanted to do a softer inside edge. So we're cleaning off the stencils, and then she'll use some white pigment ink. I have a brush that is designated for only white pigment ink, and we're applying that on the inside edge. So with the orange, we applied a darker ink to the outside edge to make it darker there. Here we're doing a lighter ink, a white ink, on top of our brown ink to make it softer on the inside edge. So it just gives a little variation. Either way works, adding a darker or adding the white for a lighter look. All right, so now we can peel that off, clean our stencils, and then it's time to do the green on the inside. Now I believe the stencil set comes with these 2 pieces that you see in my hands here, but I think I threw mine away by accident. So I just used the die that you see there to cut from that stencil material, and I created 2 masks to cover the brown inking that we just did. Now you could also just die cut this from scrap paper, even some printer paper, and temporarily tape that over the inking that we just did. But again, I do believe the stencil set comes with those pieces. All right, so I'm just lining those up, and you can see how I have them stuck to the grip mat on the side, but we also want to mask off the area outside of these two shapes. So we're just using some satin tape from Altenew. You could definitely reuse those pieces a few times so you can get more use from them. I've been known to do that, and I have lots of that tape stuck to the edge of my desk for me to reuse. So into that opening in the center, Lila is applying key lime ink, which is one of the most beautiful green colors, and it's from Gina K Designs. This is a good reminder that you can mix the different inks together. You don't have to stick with one ink line. I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in that, and it is really freeing if you allow yourself to use different company inks together. Just reach for the color that you want most for the project that you're working on. So today I think I'm using Hero Arts, Altenew, Gina K, Concord and 9th, and more. So we did the key lime over the large opening, and now she's coming in with my favorite green, which is Let Us Celebrate from Altenew, and applying that kind of to the outside. So the outside of that opening is darker than the inside. Again, don't waste your time taking too much effort to get a perfect blend. It'll all look great in the end. All right, so now we can remove all of those masks, and then it's time to add our little seeds to the inside. Now you have an option. You can ink black ink over this for the seeds, but what Lila decided to do was to just put a bit of green ink over this so she knows where to place die cut seeds later on. Now you could totally eyeball it, but it's always fun and easier when you have a guide for the placement. So she's just putting green ink here, could be any color, because we do plan to cover it up with die cut seeds later on. And there we have our kiwi. We'll add those die cuts and sentiments later in this video, but first let's do the rest of our inking and create 2 strawberry backgrounds. Now this one we got a little creative with. She asked for my help with it. You could either make the entire card panel red with seeds with the green leaf on top for a giant oversized strawberry, but I decided to cut a strawberry mask. I'm using that blank stencil material, again I have that linked below, and cutting kind of a strawberry shape. Totally freehanded it, didn't want it to look like a perfect shape, and that's a good thing because it is not, but you could also use cardstock to create that mask. So we have our grip mat turned sideways here, and we're placing 2 white cardstock panels on it, but this time we're having the sides meet up. Then we'll place that strawberry mask shape that I just created over it so it stretches across the 2 panels. Now the material I used isn't super big there, so I did do a bit of tape to hold it down because I was afraid the grip mat didn't have enough of the stencil to hold in place, so the little tape was handy. Now at this point, Lila texted Nina, who owns Waffle Flower, and was telling her about the card she was making. So she's over on the side texting with Nina on my phone while I do the inking. So she's still here, but that's why she kind of ditches us for a bit. Now I did a pale tomato, which is one of my favorite colors from Hero Arts, and then I added some poppy from Concord and 9th. Decided that wasn't dark enough, so I added some cherry from Hero Arts. Don't be afraid to mix colors to get what you want. Add more color if you want it to be darker. You can even use white pigment ink on top if you want it softer. For the seeds, you could use the 3rd stencil in that stencil set and ink over it, maybe with some gold ink. But we decided to do gold seeds later, die cut seeds, so we're going to leave it as is. Now for the leaf portion of the stencil, I'm using the die set, and it has this little piece here that's perfect for the leaves on the strawberries. It'd also be fun for a hill or cloud background. That's another use for it. But I'm just cutting that from white cardstock, and you can see I have 2 pieces there. I'm going to trim off the top of those so it really doesn't matter how tall they are. And on this, I'm applying some green ink. Now I could have started with green cardstock. However, since my strawberry has an inked look to it, a stenciled look, I wanted to have an inked look to this green piece too. So I started with white cardstock, and I'm applying some green ink over it. I did the Let Us Celebrate over the whole piece, and then a darker green towards the top. And I'll do this with both of the pieces. And you can see the grip mat is nice for just holding cardstock pieces as you ink on them. It doesn't have to be just for stenciling. So I have these two pieces that I will glue to the top of our strawberries, but I'm going to wait until Lila comes back to join me to finish them all off. Okay, we have 6 fruit backgrounds that we can turn into 6 cards, and it really didn't take long at all. All we need are sentiments and some accents. So here Lila has die cut seeds using the die from the Oversized fruit die set from Waffle Flower. And she cut those from a white glitter cardstock, but it's a frosted white glitter, so it's not too sparkly. It just has a little texture to it, which we thought was fun for the seeds. She's applying them onto the stenciled orange areas using Gina K Connect liquid adhesive and a pickup tool so she can get the placement just right. After completing the oranges, she moved on to the kiwis. And remember, she stenciled the seed shapes onto the kiwis, so she knew exactly where to place the black glossy die cut seeds. That black glossy paper gives a little interest to this. You could definitely use dimension if you wanted to, but we were going for low bulk cards, so we just glued them on directly. For the strawberries, I'm gluing the little leaf piece onto the top of each. You can see I cut them really big so that I could move them around and get the position just right. After I've glued them on, I can flip them over and trim off the excess. So this has another layer added to it. I could definitely have created a stencil using that die if I wanted to keep this a 1-layer card, but I thought it was fun to add those inked die cut leaf pieces on the top. Now here Lila is adding the little seeds to the strawberries, and these are cut from gold matte cardstock for just a little bit of sparkle. All we have left is to add some sentiments. So we're taking that grip mat that we used before to hold our stencil and paper in place and putting it inside of the MISTI stamping tool. I love this size one, which I've linked below, because it fits in my MISTI. On the back of the grip mat, I put the grid that comes with the mat. That grid, you can see, has green lines that help with lining things up. You'll see that in a moment. But the grip mat is still able to grip inside of the stamping tool and stay in place. And it holds my cardstock in place, so you really don't need to use a magnet in most cases. So I stamped that with black Obsidian ink, which is a pigment ink from Altenew. And now Lila is doing her favorite technique, which is heat embossing. So she's adding clear embossing powder to it and then heat setting it with a heat gun. I gave her a little clip to hold so she doesn't get that heat too close to her fingers. That's really handy to have. You could also use tweezers to hold it if you prefer. After heat setting these, we will use the coordinating die to cut them out and set them aside for a bit later. Next, I wanted to show you how we stamped greetings on the inside and made sure we got them straight. We have our grip mat in the MISTI stamping tool here, and you can see there are those green heavy lined rectangles. Those are the size of an A2 or A7 card. And there's a little plus sign there in the center, which is the center of those rectangles. So if you center a sentiment on that plus sign or slightly above it, then place your card into that rectangle. You know it'll be centered and straight. This is really handy and something that I've been using a lot with this grip mat and the stamping tool. So Lila and I continued to do stamping on all of these cards. We did it off screen because it's pretty basic, but we wanted to show you all 6 completed cards. So Lila is back to share those. I did use that texture fruit plate that I showed you at the beginning. That creates that faux stitching in a fruit pattern. I use that on the envelope flaps. You just run it through your die cut machine like a regular die, but only on the envelope flap. And we did that for each of the matching envelopes. Here you can see how we used 2 different stamp sets from Waffle Flower. One has the punny greetings, and then the other one has the big sentiments. So these cards really did not take that long to come together, and they're super cute. You could definitely add interest to these by maybe using some glitter paste or glitter embossing powder, but we kept them pretty simple and were able to make them very quickly. And remember, this is a 2-for-1 stencil hack. I did do that video that was a 4-for-1 stencil hack. I know many of you used that trick and shared your cards on social media. I love seeing them, so many great ideas. This is just another version of it and another way you can make more of your large stencils and stamps. All right, if you are interested in what Lila used today, it's linked below in my YouTube description. And by the way, I did pay Lila for her time, and the money she earned making this video, she is giving to the Live Like Rue Foundation, which helps doggies, and I will link to that below too. At the end, I have a couple other videos linked, including that 4-for-1 stencil technique. I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.